Welcome to the ATU Sports Corner. I'm your host, Donovan Warren, with Caden and Brandon. Today we're going to be doing the preview for College Basketball Conference, and we'll start off with the ACC. Who's going to be the championship for the ACC?
I think Duke's going to repeat again this year. I don't think this team this year is quite as talented as that Cooper Flagg squad from last year, but they do have some solid returners: Malik Brown, Isaiah Evans, Caleb Foster, even Patrick Ngongba, who I don't think played as much as he could have last year because of their great big man rotation. But obviously they have the two Boozer brothers who are coming in. Cam Boozer is a contender for National Player of the Year and, of course, Conference Player of the Year in that. And I think that they are going to be good enough to get the job done again this year.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I really like this Duke team. Cameron Boozer is, I think, him and DeBanster, they're the two best freshmen in college basketball, along with Darren Peterson, of course. And I think Cameron Boozer is going to perform at a very high level. The rest of this Duke team, like you said, Caleb Foster, Isaiah Evans, Malik Brown, they're all going to be very impactful. They also have Dame Sarr, another freshman who could be very good. And the rest of the ACC is all kind of in question. NC State could be decent now with Will Wade. There's a few other teams that could potentially make a push, but safest bet, in my opinion, safest team that I think will succeed is definitely the Duke Blue Devils.
Yeah, I mean, there's squads like Louisville who I think have a chance, Michael Brown, and the way that they've moved since they got a new coach. But I think the way Jon Scheyer has really had this Duke team coming since he has gotten that job it's been super impressive to me. You don't normally see a coach take over for such a legendary guy like Coach K and immediately thrive the way Scheyer has, and he's done exactly that.
And in the ACC, who do we think is going to be the player of the year? With Duke having the Boozer twins, do you think it's going to be one of them?
Yeah, I feel like Cam Boozer is kind of the default pick here. He's been really impressive in their couple preseason games against Tennessee. He was incredible, and it's hard for me to bet against that guy right now.
I completely agree. I mean, like you said, again, too, with this team not being as talented as last year's team with Cooper Flagg, of course, and Boozer potentially not being as talented as Flagg. But this is still, man, that's a two-time Gatorade Player of the Year. He's a four-time state champion, and he's a two-time gold medalist already, and he's just entering his freshman year. I think he's going to thrive for Jon Scheyer. I think he's going to thrive in the ACC. I think they can make a push in the tournament before the regular season. He's going to impress. This team is in need of a bucket getter, of a pure scorer, and he did that in preseason in the games that they played already. And he's shown that he can be a leader for this team as a freshman and prove to the rest of the ACC and the rest of college basketball that Duke is here to compete yet again, even after losing big players like Tyrese Proctor, Cooper Flagg, Sion James, and other valuable pieces.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I always notice with the freshmen who are contending for Player of the Year is they're always two-way guys. Cooper Flagg last year, in the past, like Zion and Cade Cunningham. It's not guys who are just focused on one side of the ball, and I think Cam Boozer is exactly that, and I think he's actually even better on defense than he is on offense. So I think that's going to help him out a lot in that regard.
Moving on to the SEC, who do we think is going to be the champion for that, with Florida being the defending champs last year?
Yeah, defending national champions, and this roster is, I mean, some people are even arguing it's better than last year's team. I wouldn't go quite that far just yet, but I do think they are absolutely on par. Of course, they get Condon and Chinyelu back, as well as Houck and Handlockton, but they also bring in guys like Boogie Flan, Xavier Lee. I mean, this team is absolutely stacked once again. I don't think that they're going to have any guards that were quite as good as Walter Clayton was for them last year, but Fland and Lee are absolutely more than capable. I'm a big fan of Xavier Lee in his game that he had up in Princeton. I'm not sure how much that's going to translate to the SEC level, but I do know he will at least be a very good player.
The SEC has some very good teams, of course, like they always do. Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, they're all great contenders, but I think as an overall pick to win the SEC, I think Florida is the safest pick, and that's just because they're bringing back really good players, like you said, Chinyelu, Condon, Houff, and they brought in a very good freshman from last year that played for the Hogs in Boogie Flan, now playing for Florida. He was a very good guard for them last year, averaged around 15 points, around 5 assists. He was very impactful for the Hogs when he was on the court. I think he can elevate with Todd Golden on this Gators squad. It is going to suck losing Walter Clayton. He was one of, if not the best players in the tournament last year. Probably was the best player. And then losing people like Will Richard. All those guys, they really clicked together. So rebuilding this Florida team, I definitely don't think it'll be as good as last year's team, but they're to be reckoned with.
Yeah, and I think I do want to mention Kentucky, even though I don't really think that they are as good as this Florida team. But I think that's just mostly because Florida feels like such a juggernaut this year. But I am a big fan of what Mark Pope has done in the offseason to build up this Kentucky roster. Jalen Lowe is, I think, one of the more underrated players in the entire country, an absolute stud point guard coming over from Pittsburgh. I talked a bit about him last year on the show, but I think his ability to initiate the offense is exactly what they need, something they didn't really have at the same level last year. I know Owe is solid at that, but he's not really a point guard. Denzel Aberdeen, also coming over from Florida, can do a bit of that as well. I think that's going to make a real difference for this Wildcat team this year, especially like the defense last year was awful for them, just flat out awful. And I think like if Jaden Quaintance and Garrison developing, I think if those guys can just make them like even okay on defense, I think that's going to make a massive difference for them.
A big team pushing in the SEC, even in the state, of course, is Arkansas. What do you think they're going to be true competitors? Because they have a lot of huge freshmen, and they brought back, a good portion of their roster from last year.
I don't know. The SEC, it feels like it's just Florida's conference to lose, to be honest. I have a hard time seeing another team win it unless something just goes wrong for Florida. They kind of just feel head and shoulders above everybody to me right now.
So who do we think is going to be the player of the year? Is it going to be someone from Florida?
I don't think so. I'm actually going to go a little bit off the wall here. I'm going to go with Tahad Pettiford, a guy who only started one game last year at Auburn, but boy, was he electric. This guy is explosive on offense. He has a great quickness. He shot the ball 37% on high volume. I expect that number to improve and maybe even the volume to go up some more. Averaged about 12 points a game off the bench. He's the exact type of player I think is poised to make a leap in their second season, an explosive guard. I think he was honestly more than capable of entering the NBA draft and getting real minutes in year one, but he chose not to. And I think that's going to pay off for him, and he's going to get player of the year in the conference.
Yeah, he averaged 12 points a year off the bench, and he's the only returning player from that Final Four team. Last year, a lot of players left after Bruce Pearl had a very shocking retirement about a month or two right before the season. I think it was personally just to kind of alleviate his son the job. He was an assistant coach. But either way, I think Tahad Pettiford is an amazing ball player. I think he has a very good chance to win this. But outside of Pettiford, I think an amazing candidate to win this award is, of course, Otega Oweh. Last year, he was very impressive, averaged 16, 4, and 1.5 steals. That Kentucky team under Mark Pope, they're always going to be competitive. Otega Oweh is always going to compete at a high level. And this Kentucky team, they're solid all around, and having him as the leader of a top SEC team is never going to disappoint when it comes to award time.
Yeah, Oweh's really interesting. He has that rare combination of both length and athleticism that you don't normally see. And I would like to see him translate that more into being a really elite defender. I think he was a good defender last year, but I think he's capable of being a real game wrecker on that end. And I think if he can become that, he does have a real chance to be player of the year.
We're now going to go to break, and when we come back, we'll do the Big East Conference.
Everyone tells you to think about the future, but we know there's growth in the journey. At ATU, we value this moment because here, nature becomes your classroom. So breathe it in. You've got this. Right here, right where you are. Focus on the now, because our focus is on your success.
We are back with the preview for the College Basketball Conference, and we're going to do the Big East Conference. Caden, who do we think is going to be the champion of that?
The champion of the Big East and potentially more is going to be the St. John's Red Storm. I loved this team last year. I thought they were phenomenal. I had them very far in my bracket. Got knocked out by the Hogs. That's not going to happen again this year. Pitino's not slipping up like that 2 years in a row. They bring back a lot of the roster and good players like Ejiofor, and they bring in some huge transfers that are going to make big impacts early on. This team, like me and Brandon talked about before the show, they might struggle with a little bit of continuity at the beginning of the season, but in a Hall of Fame coach, potentially one of the greatest coaches of all time, in Rick Pitino, he's going to get that down come tournament time. Come March, this Red Storm team is going to be ready to make some noise.
Yeah, I've been a big fan of Pitino's squads for a very long time, since I've started watching basketball, really. And to be honest, though, I didn't really like St. John's team last year as much. I had a lot of worries about their offensive game, and that is ultimately what got them in the end. But I think one thing that's being overlooked with this St. John's team, and the reason why I'm also taking them to win the conference, is Bryce Hopkins. This is a guy who's only played 17 games in the last 2 years. But if he can be back and healthy for this team, I think he is one of the better players in the country. He's a big 6'7" wing, has a larger frame, can get into the paint and also shoot it as well. I think he's exactly the type of offensive player they lacked last year, along with Ian Jackson as a dynamic guard for them. And I think that they can really contend for some things in the national picture.
Yeah, my biggest discredit to this St. John's team, in my opinion, last year was, especially whenever they got eliminated, was the R.J. Lewis performances. When it came tournament time, he absolutely crumbled. He shot terrible efficiency. He couldn't get a bucket for the St. John's team when he was the primary playmaker, primary scorer. They bring in people like Bryce Hopkins, Osiah Sellers, and some other guys that can score the basketball, not just put all the weight onto people like R.J. Lewis and Ejiofor, but spread the ball out and not be so reliant on one guy to get a bucket, because as we saw in the tournament, it didn't work out for him.
Yeah, I think one thing I'm also looking at in this team is this team might be like the best rim protecting team in the country. Zuby Ejiofor, obviously, we saw what he did last year, but also Dylan Mitchell, the transfer coming from Cincinnati. He was incredible for them last year. He was like an advanced stats darling. All of the advanced numbers had him ranked very, very high all season. And I think he's going to bring that exact same type of defensive impact, that shot blocking he brings. He's only about 6'8", but he can absolutely jump out of the gym, and his shot blocking with that athleticism is nuts.
So who do we think is going to be the player of the year of the Big East Conference? I heard you say Bryce Hopkins, Brandon.
Bryce Hopkins definitely has a chance, but I do think that, like we talked about, the St. John's team just has so many guys that it's hard for me to envision one guy really separating themselves as the player of the year. But I do think a guy who has a chance to do that is Solo Ball for UConn. Averaged about 14 a game last year, but was 40-40 splits, absolute lights out from three, 42% on over, or almost 7 a game, excuse me. That is absolutely absurd. And he's 6'4", has an absolutely ridiculous wingspan. And I think if he can use that wingspan and athleticism to become better driving to the rim and finishing at the rim with that incredible three-point shooting, I think he's more than capable of being Conference Player of the Year.
I think Solo Ball and Alex Karaban, I think they're going to be probably the best duo in the Big East when it comes to player recognition. But for my Player of the Year, I'm going back to St. John's, and I'm going to take Zuby Ejiofor. Last year, he averaged just south of 15 points a game. He averaged 8 rebounds, 2.5 stocks, and he shot 58% from the field. He was very efficient, did great in the minutes he had, very good rim protector, one of the better offensive rebounders in college basketball. But he does have a very good team around him that could come to bite him when it comes to stats. But it's going to improve the overall team, and I think the team's success is going to help him elevate his game also into winning this award.
Yeah, I just do kind of wonder, is he going to get enough shots within that St. John's offense? And they don't play a very fast offensive style in the first place. Him getting 15 a game last year, I think, was mostly a result of the lack of offensive weapons for them. So I worry about him having quite enough shots to really put up gaudy numbers.
Moving on to the Big 12 Conference, who do y'all think is going to be the champion of that, with Houston coming off the championship? Caden, what do you think?
I think Houston is probably going to repeat again as the Big 12 champion. A lot of people really like BYU. They have a very talented roster. But if I'm just going yet again, safest pick just for college basketball, because so much can happen in a college basketball season, I think it's very easy to pick on Kelvin Sampson and his squad every single year. They're always going to be competitive. They brought back a very good roster, people like Milos Uzan and Manuel Sharp. They were very impactful for this Houston team last year. I picked them to win my bracket last year, got right there, and just lost it to Florida. Very unfortunate. But I love that Houston team. I was very confident ever since I was bracket playing that Houston was going to be my team to win it. And it proved true to make them to the championship. They just couldn't finish it out. But Big 12-wise, I definitely think they take that title home.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on this one. I think Houston is the favorite in this conference. And I think one thing that really helped them out down the stretch, especially in the tournament last year, was they really realized that Milos Uzan was the point guard of the team. I think they kind of split those duties between him, Sharp, and Cryer a lot of the times earlier in the season. But I think they kind of lean more on Uzan himself, and I think that worked wonders for them. Of course, Emmanuel Sharp is still on this team, and I think he is a very good player. Absolute lights-out shooter. I know he had that blunder at the end of the national championship game, but I expect him to bounce back from that. Also, JoJo Tugler is like one of my favorite players in the country to watch. That guy's got to have like a 7'8" wingspan or something absolutely ridiculous, and he just jumps out of the gym. He is exactly the type of like crazy small ball 5 I think can be super effective at the college level, and I think that team is going to be right back contending for a national title.
LJ Cryer, he was a big bucket getter last year. Whenever they needed it, he would get it. Who do you think is going to be the one to kind of fill that void this year for the Cougars?
I think Uzan and Sharp are both just going to have to take a lot more shots, and I think they're actually both very capable of that. I don't really foresee any problems. Maybe you don't want Uzan taking a ton of threes. You want him trying to get downhill. But, I mean, Sharp, I've been a big fan of his game for a few years now, really. 40% on about 6 attempts a game for 3 on an offense that really does not play at a very high pace is super impressive.
I think the biggest thing that impressed me last year and made them pick them for my bracket was their defense. They're not their offense that always performs at the highest level, but their defense, Kelvin Sampson's squads are going to be elite defensively every night. And defense travels. Offense might not always travel, but their defense was elite in every single game. They're always going to be able to get stops. It's just if that offense is going to be able to do just enough to outweigh how much their defense is doing.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like almost any other team, if they lose the type of big men that Houston lost, I think I'd be pretty nervous about their defense. Not Houston, man. Not with Kelvin Sampson at the helm. I fully believe in his ability to restock this defense.
So who do y'all predict is going to be the player of the year coming out of the Big 12 Conference?
I think there's 3 guys, in my opinion, that are really close for it. First one, of course, kind of a consensus pick, is A.J. Dybantsa. He's projected to be potentially the number 1 pick. He's been hyped up for years now. Everyone really loves his game. He's a very big wing. He can handle the ball. He can play make, and he can really score the basketball. But I don't know if he's going to be able to win that on that very talented BYU team. Like you said, Richie Saunders is going to be very impactful. Might take some of the shine away from Dybantsa. 2 other guys I really like is J.T. Toppin. He was amazing in the tournament last year, probably the most fun person I had watching in the tournament. In the regular season, averaged 18, 9, and 1.5 blocks, averaged 19.3 and 11 in the tourney. And he had some crazy stat lines during the regular season last year. He had some games where he scored 40 with about 15 rebounds, and he really had a very impactful season. But my pick, personally, is going to be Darren Peterson, the freshman for Kansas. He's going to be a beast. At Prolific Prep last year, he averaged 30 points a game with 7 rebounds and 7 assists on very good efficiency. I think he's going to be very elite for Bill Self's Kansas squad this year.
I'm going to go a little bit off the wall here, and you gave a little bit of a teaser to it, but I'm going to go with Richie Saunders to be Big 12 Player of the Year. This guy was great last year and was absolutely incredible in the NCAA tournament, 22 a game. 50-40-100 splits, almost 60-40-100 splits, really. He was absolutely dynamic in that electric BYU offense, and I think that will be more of the same this year. Isn't quite the defender you would normally see winning this type of award, but I think his offense will be good enough to get it on its own. And this BYU offense is going to be great with Dybantsa, like you talked about. Rob Wright coming over as a transfer, Kiba Keita catching lobs down low. I think BYU is going to be really good. I think they're going to have a chance to do some great things this year, and I think Richie Saunders will be the head of that.
Do you think they're a true Final Four contender?
I think so. I mean, we always have like some random team make the Final Four. It feels like every year, other than last year, obviously. But it's hard to say like, oh, this team's not going to make the Final Four. But I do think they're probably like a 2 or a 3 seed.
Okay, my final question regarding BYU. Is A.J. Dybantsa going to be the best freshman in BYU history, surpassing Jimmer Fredette?
I don't have Jimmer Fredette's freshman numbers in front of me. I feel like he did a lot of his damage after his freshman year. So I'll say, yeah, he can do it.
That's fair.
Our last conference is the Big Ten Conference, and Purdue is the heavy favorite, actually ranked number 1. Do we think that they're going to be the champion?
I do, and I think that this is largely on the backs of their big 3, all the returners coming back from last year. Braden, obviously, is absolutely incredible. I think he's the best point guard in the country, maybe even the best player in the country. Trey Kaufman-Renn averaged 20 a game for them last year. He is a dynamic power forward for them. And Fletcher Lawyer doesn't really get a lot of love, but he is an absolutely electric shooter, almost 45% from 3 on just under 5 a game for him. He is absolutely dynamic. And also the transfer Oscar Clough, the big man, is coming in to start at center for them. He is absolutely incredible if you have not watched him play at South Dakota State. He has a great post game, also defends the rim really well. And one guy I am fairly interested to see for them, Daniel Jacobson, the 7'4" big man. Only played a couple games last year. He was obviously brought in as kind of like the Zach Edey replacement, although I don't think you can really replace the things that Zach Edey did, but that was the idea behind it, and I think that he can provide some things in the minutes that he gets.
I think Purdue is definitely the consensus pick. They're number 1 ranked in the nation. Braden Smith's a very good player. Trey Kaufman-Renn's very good. And this is no disrespect to this Purdue team, but I have never seen them perform come tournament time.
They made the Natty a couple years ago.
I wouldn't say I have hate for Purdue, but man, do they not perform when it comes to the tournament, in my opinion. It seems like every year they're losing to Pacific or somebody, some small school that somehow made the tournament, and they're just in a dogfight with them in the early rounds. And that's too worrisome for me with Purdue. They might win the Big Ten, but I'm going to go a little different here. I like UCLA. I really like Donovan Dent, but I'm not going to take the Bruins to win the Big Ten. I'm going to take the Wolverines. I really like this team. They lost Danny Wolf. They lost I can't think of the big guy's name now, but I really didn't like
Golden.
him. I didn't like Golden at all, but they lost him too. I really like this Michigan team. They brought in Yaxel Lindeborg. He was potentially one of the best players in the tournament from last year. He averaged 17 and 11 and 4 for UAB. He had a lot of fun watching him, and he brings a different type of style to this Michigan team. He definitely plays basketball a little differently than you'd expect. Averaging 11 rebounds for his size is kind of unheard of. And they also bring in Elliot Cadeau. He is also very good. And I think this Michigan team is going to compete at a high level. They've still got Gale Jr. and some other guys that can be impactful at a very high level. And Dusty May's squad is going to be very, very good yet again.
This Michigan team's interesting, but I really don't think that the guard play is going to be good enough to hang with teams like Purdue. I do think they have great bigs. I do like the addition of Ade Mara, Morez Johnson as well, alongside Yaxel Lindeborg like we talked about. But Elliot Cadeau, I don't really have a lot of faith in, especially in the jump shooting, and I just don't really see this team being able to compete with the team that I think is maybe the best team in the country.
Well, with Purdue being the heavy favorites, do any other teams have a chance of having a Player of the Year?
I think there's guys with chances. I think Lindeborg, like we talked about, has a really, really good shot, but I think Braden Smith is going to be my pick. I think he might even be he might have a chance to win Player of the Year in the nation. But Yaxel Lindeborg, he is an absolutely dynamic big man. Not the type of guy you normally see at the college level. He can handle the ball. He can shoot the three. He can defend the rim. There's really nothing on the court he can't do. But for Braden Smith, man, this guy is the absolute prototypical point guard. Averaged 9 assists a game, 16 points. He is absolutely dynamic in that aspect. 38% from three on over 6 attempts a game. He is hyper efficient. He passes the ball well, doesn't turn it over. He plays exactly the type of game that guys love to vote for to win Player of the Year. Just clean, nice, safe, good basketball, and I think that's what's going to win him the award.
I'm going to go back with my Wolverines, and I'm going to take Yaxel Lindeborg. He only had 3 games last year in the regular season where he wasn't in double-digit points. 3. That's consistency. He was very good for UAB. He's with a better coach now in Dusty May, a better system. Michigan basketball, I think they can get back to where they were a few years ago with Jordan Poole when they went on a little run. And I think he can be very impactful for this team in many different aspects. I think his defense can still take a few steps better. He wasn't phenomenal defensively. He can always get better. Rebounding, he was 4th in D1 last year. I think that continues to stay at that level. And I just think at 6'9", he does a lot on the floor for this Michigan team, and I think he could definitely win Big Ten Player of the Year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Yoxel, but I think one thing that kind of makes me a little bit nervous about him winning Player of the Year, like I said, the guard play on this team is not great, and I think whenever Lindenborg has been forced to have a lot of ball handler duties, which I do think he will have this year, the turnovers tend to get pretty high. I think we actually saw that a lot with Danny Wolf last year, and I think we'll see more of the same with Lindenborg. I think he is maybe actually the best player in this conference, but I don't know if the way this team is constructed will be good for him to actually win Player of the Year.
Do you see any light for Donovan Dent at UCLA? Averaged 20 last year for the Lobos.
Yeah, I really like Donovan Dent, but I just don't think that UCLA is really going to be able to compete at the higher level, and I think that's probably more of a factor than it should be in these type of awards, but I think that's just the reality of the situation.
We're now going to go back to break, and we're going to finish it off with the end of the season predictions. We are back with the end of the season predictions, and we're going to start off with the National Player of the Year. Who do you think is going to take that?
You know, we just did a whole spiel about Braden Smith, and I do think that he is going to come away with this award. I think he's in the perfect situation, dynamic guard, has a ton of assists, not a lot of turnovers, scores very efficiently, and is going to be on a very, very good team. I think Purdue has a chance to win the national title, and I do think that that is exactly what voters are looking for in this award, and I think he's going to win it.
I'm going to head to Rock Chalk Jayhawk. I haven't really been keeping up with Kansas too much these past couple years because I am a certified Hunter Dickinson hater. I cannot stand Hunter Dickinson. I used to like Kansas a little bit, but ever since he got there, it was downhill. But now he's gone, brings in a new player to shine for the Jayhawks, and that is going to be the freshman Darren Peterson. Like I said earlier, averaged 37 and 7 at Prolific Prep. He's a very good freshman. Bill Self said it's one of the best freshmen he's had coming into the beginning of a season, one of the best, most developed freshmen he's seen. And he can make a huge impact early for this Jayhawks team in the Big 12. He's going to dominate. And I know he's dealing with a little bit of cramp, a little bit of injury. He might not play this early game against these smaller schools. But once he gets ramped up and ready to play some big-time basketball, Darren Peterson is going to be phenomenal.
Yeah, Peterson's interesting because I feel like he's going to get a lot of point guard type duties this year for Kansas, and I don't really remember a time where we saw like a big wing with guard skills really taking on that type of responsibility for Kansas. And I feel like it's honestly kind of out of necessity. They don't really have a dynamic guard like you're used to. You know, El Marco Jackson has shown flashes of that type of stuff, maybe Trey White. But that's not really something they have this year, and I think that will open up opportunities for Darren Peterson to do some really cool things this year.
I think this is just going to bring new life to Kansas. They've kind of, I feel like they've been stuck in a similar loop with like Dickinson and DeJuan Harris and just all of these similar guys that just they kept putting together every single year, and it never really panned out. Last year they lost to Arkansas in the first round. They haven't really had much success recently, but this is giving new life to a Kansas team with a very exciting freshman. And I think he's going to take the reins, and he's not going to disappoint.
So who do we think is going to be the national championship? Purdue's being like a heavy favorite in Houston. Do you think it's going to be one of them?
You know, it's really tough. I've been debating between those two and Florida for myself. those are obviously the deepest and most talented teams. But I think once again, I'm just going to stay on the Purdue train. I think that this is finally the year that Painter gets over the hill and gets it done. Obviously, we just talked a ton about Braden Smith. I'm a big fan of Oscar Clough's game, the transfer from South Dakota State. He has been incredible. He was incredible all year for them, was one of the most dynamic players in the mid-majors, and I think that he has a chance to really stretch his game out to 3 maybe. He only took a couple attempts, but he actually shot like 67% from 3 last year. Not that that really means a whole ton, but I think it's something he's capable of expanding his game to. Trey Kaufman-Renn has been a great player for a couple years now. His post scoring has been super dynamic for them. Maybe also another guy who we could see stretch his game out to 3. And I think that's really going to be the X factor for this team. Can Clough, can Trey Kaufman-Renn, can they extend their game out to the 3-point line? I think if they can, Purdue's going to finally get it done this year.
With a genuine heart, I can't with Purdue. It's just they've been too disappointing.
They just went to the Natty a couple years ago.
But they haven't won one. They've just been too good.
Nobody's won one until they have.
But they've been too good for too long to not produce. That's just my personal opinion. And this might be coming from a guy that puts Purdue far in his brackets maybe, and he keeps getting heavily disappointed because he keeps putting the Boilermakers to boil, and they sure don't. The hot water runs out. So I'm not taking them, but I'm going to go to a team that didn't have the best end last year, but they can sure pick it up this year, and that is the St. John's Red Storm. They bring back Zuby Ejiofor. He was phenomenal last year. They lose R.J. Lewis. Might not be the worst thing for the team, but they bring in Bryce Hopkins, averaged 17 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists at Providence last year. They bring in Ian Jackson, who was a good freshman last year at North Carolina, averaged 12 points. They bring in Dylan Mitchell, who was at Texas, then Cincy, averaged 10 points last year. They bring in Osiah Sellers, who averaged 13.7 at Stanford. And then, I told you about this before the show, this is a big one. Dylan Darling averaged 20 points per game at Idaho State. Might not mean a lot to most people, most fans, but
he's legit.
Those D2, low D1 guys, they can play. They come to these big schools and they make things shake. I think all of these transfers Pitino has brought in, I think they're going to work phenomenal together, and this Red Storm team is going to be legit, especially under Rick Pitino.
I think St. John's might be the most talented team in the country, and I think you're right about that, to believe in them. But one common denominator with these last few championship teams in the transfer portal era has been continuity. It is teams that have kept the same few core guys, with obviously a few additions, but the same few guys have been on those teams for a couple of years. That is not the case at all with St. John's. Like, just Zuby Ejiofor is really the only guy, the main guy who is coming back, and I think that's going to be an issue once we come down to the stretch for them.
That is undeniable. They really haven't brought much back, but I would say for sure with this pick, I am banking on Pitino to really rally these guys together, because I think whenever you have a prestigious coach like that, I mean, I'd believe in Pitino to do a lot for that squad, and I think he could get them together come tournament time.
That's going to be all we have for the ATU Sports Corner this week. I want to thank you all for watching, and make sure to tune in next Monday.